run their school of, like it's a department in their university from the royalty sales of the abacavir. That's the amount of money which they get, several hundreds of millions of dollars. In the previous example of pregabalin, I forgot to mention 700 million sales they got in 2014. The Northwestern University got 700 million as a royalty for them. It's a huge money, right? So it's a win-win situation for academia industry. Why academia gets benefited is they get money from these sales if they're opening up their IP for the industry. Even though industry funding less, you fund more, but you license them to the industry so that they monetize them and then give you back the profits or the sales. And then for the academia, for the industry, they have bigger R&Ds, but they are focused on particular areas. They don't do research in diversified areas like academia does it. Sometimes an academia solution might be required for them, right? Their focus is to mileage the research which they're getting, to monetize the research that they're getting, because they should see the profits immediately. Otherwise, the research is closed. So that's why the funding is less from the industry perspective. What industry does is they pick those patents which are available from the industry and monetize them and share the profits with the industry. So this is what happening. Both the parties, like industry and academia, are gaining out those examples. But I failed to get many examples of huge money involved, except from Imtech, which I did not mention here, which they got few crores out of the technologies which they out-licensed to the industry, right? So what are the limitations when you get into licenses? Everything is not a rose for you. You get some advantages, but there are also some limitations. What are the limitations? Licensee cannot challenge the IP of the owner. Suppose if I take a license from somebody else, they put those limitations so that you cannot oppose the patent even if it's a week. So you are handcuffed there that you cannot do anything except follow the IP, pay royalty as long as you are using it. You cannot challenge it so that it comes to the public domain, right? Any improvements you make on those IP, which you take out. Suppose if I take a product from somebody else and I make a better formulation of it or a better process to make that product, I have to give it back the original owner. So these are certain limitations. So that means I'm losing freedom in taking license from the IP owners. So there are certain limitations. But you have to merit yourself. If I take a license from these companies, the limitations are better for me or the advantages are better. You merit them properly and then take licenses. So these are how the industry is happening, especially in the pharma segment, the industry is happening. Right? And coming back to the madam's question on the prescriptions made by the doctors, we have different markets in the globe. The markets is like doctors, the regulators have made that type of marketing actually. The regulators like Dr. Sabharwal itself, drug controllers, or the FDAs or whatever is the agencies. They say any drug should be substitutable, non-substitutable. We have two markets. So if doctor writes a prescription, in a substitutable market, doctor had freedom to substitute it actually. He can write. So what he writes is, instead of Lyrica, which is a pregabalin brand, he writes pregabalin. So whatever is available in the pharmacy, when I take a prescription, the pharmacist can give any product because it's open substitutable market. He can give any company's brand, whichever is based on the costing. Whenever it is a substitutable market, costing is very low because nobody commands the market at that time. Availability in the pharmacy commands. It's the pharmaceutical industry to put them in the pharmacy on the right time. So many European markets are substitutable markets. That's why the prices are very low in Europe compared to the US. Even though same patents are there, same patent 20 years, 25 years, whatever, everything is there. But because of market driven, the prices are low there. In the US, the prices are high because it's not a substitutable market. It's a brand-named product market. So they cannot control. If the brand is written, pharmacy has to give the brand. But because of the insurance system coming up in a big way, healthcare reforms coming up in the big way in the US, they're also starting doing substitutions in some areas. Right? In India, we have multiple, even though brand is written in the prescription, we are substitutable market because we can buy any product as long as we are educated. I'll give an example which happened a couple of months back. With one of a patient, I do not know personally. I think, bone marrow cancer. The best bone marrow cancer drug is zoledronic acid with the brand name Zometa of Novartis. So when the patient approached the doctor, because it's the brand is promoted well here, so they subscribed a brand of Zometa which costs around 19,000 rupees. They were worried. So somebody, I don't know how they came to know, somebody approached me saying, oh, is there any alternative for this product? Then I did some good research and found at least 10 alternative brands in India, including the Cipla brand and Reddy's brand. It costs 10% of 19,000. So if I'm paying 1,900 rupees for one injection of Zometa, it's better. Then I also advise them, because these are cancer products, they may not switch over the brand because it has to be administered in the hospital. Doctor has to, under the care of the doctor, the drugs have to be administered. It's not like a pill which you take home and then administer yourself. So I advise them also, better educate the doctor, saying that this many list of brands are available, alternates are available in India. What do you do? Can I go for an alternate product here which costs me less, as long as it is equivalent? And that subject has been touched by Dr. Sabharwal in his talk. They're saying that as long as bioequivalent, you can switch over to any product. And it has worked in this example, which has happened just 3-4 months back with me. They approached me, I gave a list of products, and then afterwards I asked them, did you switch over from Zometa? Yes, we have. We could convince the doctor. But everybody cannot be educated like, fortunately they approached, maybe there are some professionals with the use of the internet in India or anywhere else is being misused 90%, 10% is being used properly. If you convert that into 90% of proper usage, this is one of the uses. Simple research with the product, you would get a lot of alternatives. Right? So these are some examples how patents can be used for licensing, and because of which technology transfer happens. At the end of the day, patients get benefited in the pharmaceutical segment and everybody prospers. Right? With this, I would like to thank you. And
good afternoon. Okay, you can hear me. I think maybe I'll take the caller mic. Okay. Let's try. Okay. I don't know. So he has, Bharti had given an introduction about me, and I exclusively worked. I am at IIT Kanpur, and I was there for the last 10 years. Building up the innovation ecosystem at IIT Kanpur. So, from patenting to technology transfer to commercialization, and then also startups, and then all sorts of whatever IP which has been developed. A whole IP protection and management domain, which was there which is there in IIT Kanpur, has been built over the years with very on various fronts. Building up an ecosystem means you have to facilitate both the increase in the research output in terms of technology, and also seeing that the research output is in line with what is needed by the nation, or both globally and domestically. And then once it is developed, then recognizing it, protecting it, and taking it forward so that the end user benefits from whatever we have developed. IIT Kanpur essentially, so my focus in terms of what I will be sharing with you would be mostly related with my institute. In that sense, IIT Kanpur and the work we had done, and how we interfaced with various organizations, both R&D as well as commercial organizations, in terms of taking this whole technology transfer thing forward. So to give a little bit of a stat, see, we produce about 900 papers in a year. Most of you are from research organizations, R&D, right? So you would know. And we have about 350 faculty members, and then we work both on teaching and research is always very important at IITs, and we produce about 900 papers. Okay. And every year. this is the output. That means on average you have 3 papers per person, per faculty member. Management and HSS might have a little bit lesser ones, the sciences will have more, and the engineering a little bit less, because the gestation period of getting a publication, as many of you might know, depends on the domain in which you are working. In some cases, some guy may publish 10 in a year, and some may take 5 years to publish one because the gestation period is longer, and so on and so on. Similarly, if you are looking at technology transfer also, there are some faculty who would be producing a lot more IP in terms of patenting and have more patents, and there are some, that means incremental innovation kind of a thing, where you do something, patent it, then you tweak it a little bit, then again patent it in a different way, then you tweak it a little bit more and then patent it. So patenting essentially, so there was this question with IIT faculty members that if it is not patentable, is it not research? But that's not true, because patentability is something which is like, you know, even for a screw, if you have a screw and you just change the nature of the thread or something, it can still be patentable. That does not mean that it is rocket science. So practically speaking, that domain of what is patentability, what is commerciable is not actually related to the fundamental, you know, robustness of the research. So research essentially has a different domain in terms of, so the linkage between this whole patenting and research is very, very critical in case if you want to do patenting. In this sense, I am saying that IP creation, not essentially patenting. Patenting is the end result, but IP creation, then IP protection, and then IP management. This has a huge there is a huge gap in terms of what we do in the country and what our research institutions do, and there are so many gaps which need to be filled, which cannot be filled by internal input. They need external interfaces, and they need external support and external input. Many research organizations, now I think because I have been teaching most of the capacity building programs of R&D scientists in India for the last, I think, 2 to 3 years, I have been associated with many of them. And in many cases, they have a tech transfer kind of a model which is already in place. They have some industry interface which is already in place. And they do have some kind of, you know, patent drafting, protection and patenting kind of a system in place. Most of you should have. Does anyone does not have in their organization here? Is there anyone who does not have that kind of a model where your IP is protected and commercialized? No, okay. So you must have. Many of you do know what are the different interfaces. So, given the fact that so much of IP is being created, then a part of it is being patented, the ratio between the commercialization of the patenting, that is the ratio of the number of patents to the number of patents which get commercialized, in the at least globally is around 2 to 3% maybe. Okay, so not even that. In the larger institutions like Stanford or something, it comes to 25%. That is the number of patents to the number of patents IP which is being commercialized, and the revenues can change. So it is not a. So why is it that Stanford has 25% and many of us do not have that kind of a model? So that needs a lot of other stakeholders who have to interface with us, because if you are creating IP in isolation is also a problem. That is, if I am creating IP, I am sitting here looking at, I am an expert in a specific domain, and there are 2 or 3 different ways by which you do normally in R&D or even in IIT. You look at, you are an expert in that domain, you have already done a PhD, you have a literature, and you extend that work incrementally. Either the problem statement which comes to your mind on which you work can be an incremental problem which you put your MTech PhD student together and start working towards it, or probably something which struck you when you are interfacing with other people in your peer domain in a conference or a workshop kind of a model. Very rarely does this thought process of IP creation comes from the industry, or the people who actually use it are the end users who deliver it to the market. it's really difficult because there is this wide. People talk a lot about this industry academia partnerships, industry research partnerships, industry all sorts of partnerships, but then the two in the Indian context particularly, historically the industry where our research organizations are concerned are primarily government. Either the defense or some other science and technology project programs or a bilateral program. Very rarely does the industry come into the picture. But the industry interfaces are very critical for identifying problems. Forget about commercialization. Initially, if you have to work with identifying problems, then it becomes very difficult for us to sit in isolation and think that this is the problem which I want to work on, and that problem which you are working on might excite you, but not really help anybody else in the world. That does not mean that it should not be done. What it means is that there should always be an exposure to the industry interface which will allow you to be, you are getting pinged with new and new problems which you might not have thought of in isolation. So that is where the interface comes in. It could be a startup company, it could be an existing industry, it could be anybody else. Like for instance, from our point of view, from the academic research community point of view, this interface would be very critical, but we are not very keen on talking to them, and the industry in nature, they are not very keen to talk to us also. Because for them, something which can give them immediate return is more critical than something which you can take about 3 years to develop and another 5 years to test and then patent it, the patent comes after another 5 more years. That long-term thought process in terms of interface between the industry, in terms of profit making is not there with industry, not in India primarily. In the US, what used to happen is that the government used to fund and private industry was involved in defining and looking at the problem, and primarily for defense, because defense was primarily private defense contractors. So this whole cycle essentially spawned a whole set of technologies which could be taken to the market, because there is a continuous interface between the technology and the practicality and practical end user usage of that technology, and that way the money went in a different form. In our case, we get funding, maybe the government will call for a proposal, set of proposals, or you are told to do this kind of work in this. You are in ISRO, you are asked to develop this kind because this is what we need, because somebody else is not giving it to us, so why don't we develop it? Or if I am looking at DRDO, maybe we are looking at some program in the missile domain area where you say, okay, this is what we want because Pakistan has it or somebody has it and I can't get the technology, Russia stopped giving it to me. But nowhere is that is not wrong. But the technology developed there was never showcased to the industry for purposes which are civilian in nature. If I can use the technology for purposes which are civilian in nature and showcase it to the industry and say, okay, this is what I have, because the gap with what you have developed to what the industry would want is a much larger gap. So the interface is not only for generating the ideas, but also for taking the technology to its logical conclusion where it can be commercialized and it can be, like for instance, if I am now in IIT Kanpur, if you are looking at, we have 900 papers every year. And I break my, I make my voice hoarse by telling everybody who meets me that at least 30% of this should be patentable. Okay, and then that means I should get 300 patents a year. Should be able to get 300 patents. It is a wealth which is lost for the nation. So I have to get 300 patents a year. How many do I get? I used to get 10, then now considerable, then I ramped it up with lot of education to 30, 40. Now this year we have reached a magic figure of 100. And that is because one couple of people have been very prolific in terms of, one guy essentially patented some 30 patents. Okay, so he has 12, 30 PhD students and all of them produced and he tweaked it, he knows how to do this stuff. And he worked, from fuel cells to nanomaterials we have done. The point is that if I am having 100 and I am still losing 200, right? There is a lot of education which goes as that I am more interested in publishing a paper rather than defining a patent. So that is again a problem which I have to face. But now people are realizing more and more that it is very critical that I at least do a patent search. Okay, forget about sending it to a conference, just do a stamp patent search, free of cost. US Patent Office, that database is free, so at least you do a patent search. Secondly, we have also found that industry interface is very critical. Industry talks in a different language than we talk. Industry might need something very simple, which might not excite our research brain. It might not feel very exciting. This is a small thing, I don't want to do this. But that small thing makes a lot of difference. Like for instance, if you're looking at IIT, what we did was, see, there is this, we created a rural technology action group, okay, and then there were some people, and we had devised a picking machine, particularly for UP, for Amla. So that actually increased the productivity of 200 Amlas to be picked to some 1,000 or 1,500 Amlas to be picked. Then that to be Amla is that, many of you might know Amla, okay, so, yeah, gooseberry, okay, so that, like that. See, they also found out that a horseshoe, for instance, instead of dipping it in water once you make it, you dip it into graphite or this thing, then the life of the horseshoe goes by 4 times. This is not rocket science, but the guys who need it will definitely, it makes a great improvement and it is definitely useful.